Welcome to Dr Joe Unplugged. This podcast contains general information and is not in any way medical advice. Joe Jackson had a song, Everything Causes Cancer, in the 1980s. Sounds a bit trite, but when one looks at studies, virtually hardly a day, let alone a week, goes by without some associative study coming out saying X or Y is linked to cancer. And we've spoken before on this podcast about links not being cause and effect. So two different things can be found together. It doesn't mean one has caused the other. For example, you can put on a blue shirt, you might get run over by a truck. It doesn't mean that wearing a blue shirt has caused you to be run over by a truck. Heart disease is trying to play catch up here, and I want to reference this study, and we'll put it in the description below as usual, to sort of highlight that you don't need to buy into scare of the day or scare of the week. Obviously, these types of studies get headlines. Maybe that's what they're designed to do. Don't know, can't really express an opinion, but you do wonder. Regular cell phone use linked to higher heart disease risk. Who doesn't have a cell phone these days, certainly in the developed world? And I'll plead guilty as well, who doesn't spend more time on them than is really a good idea? Now, dialing it one step back, we are now doing activities or doing things on our phone that previously we might have done somewhere else. So I subscribe to a couple of newspapers. Rather than getting the printed edition and standing at the kitchen bench and reading the newspaper, I can read the newspaper on my phone. So yes, it is time spent on my device, but it is time that I otherwise would have spent doing the same activity, which is reading the stories or the ones that interest me in the paper or in the magazine elsewhere. I might be sitting at my computer doing some work that previously, 3 decades ago, I would have done with pen and paper. We can do holidays these days. Instead of getting airline tickets, they're on our phone. We might book our travel on our phone rather than go to a travel agent, or we might even deal with a travel agent via our phone. So not all time spent on devices is additional. It can be replacement for other activities, and that is not the problem. I think if we're spending too much time on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook, any social media, and just scrolling aimlessly, that is the problem. Quote, using a cell phone for at least one call per week is linked to a higher risk for cardiovascular disease, especially among smokers and patients with diabetes. Now, really, is it one cell phone call a week? Or might it have something to do with the smoking and the diabetes, which are known risk factors for heart disease? In fact, smoking is the number one risk factor for heart disease, way bigger than cholesterol. Hear a lot about cholesterol, hear a bit about smoking, and on this podcast, and I think it's getting to that time where I might do another one, we've spoken about helping people stop smoking, not just running pointless advertisements on TV telling you to stop smoking. Everybody knows that. Anybody who hasn't been living under a rock for 60 years knows that smoking isn't good for them. So telling them that doesn't really achieve anything. We want to be making it easier rather than harder to help people stop smoking, and we know that there is the world's most popular and effective stop smoking mechanism is vaping, but the Australian government has decided to make it harder for people to do that. We've spoken about that previously. I think we'll do it again. But it's not using a mobile phone is the biggest risk. We found that a poor sleep pattern, psychological distress, and neuroticism significantly mediated the positive association between weekly mobile phone usage and the risk incident CVD, with a mediating proportion of 5.11, 11.5 and 2.25% respectively. Poor sleep patterns and poor mental health could disrupt circadian rhythms. Well, we know that. In addition, a chronic exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields, might be an issue with oxidative stress. I don't think one phone call a week is giving you a huge amount of exposure to radio frequency. And by the way, you can use earphones I tend to use earphones, or I might use a speakerphone, so I'm not putting the phone directly to my ear. Now, if you're in a bus or a crowded restaurant, maybe you don't want to put it on speakerphone, use headphones or deflect the call. You can always take it later. But the idea that one phone call a week is increasing your risk of heart disease is perhaps one of the weakest associative links that I've seen in quite a while. That could also be on me. Maybe I'm not looking at enough pathetic studies. There's a lot of them out there. But, analysis, 444,000 participants. Okay, it's a decent number of people without a history of cardiovascular disease. Well, if they're smoking and they've got diabetes, that they haven't had heart disease yet is good for them. But they do have the two, bigger risk factors, so it could be coming down the track. And really, what is the causative mechanism of one phone call a week? If you are having problems sleeping, it's probably not going to be because you're getting one phone call a week. You might have problems sleeping because you're stressed, or you might have sleep apnea. There are a whole host of reasons. Maybe there are some mental health problems. Now, next point, people say, well, if you use your phone too much, yes, that can contribute to mental health problems and anxiety in particular, and that is true. But it's not going to be one phone call a week. If the phone is always ringing at 3 a.m. and disturbing your sleep, yeah, again, maybe. Well, there's a fairly simple solution to that. Put your phone on silent. Maybe don't have it in the bedroom. Leave it in a room outside of the bedroom. So even if it does ring, and if you put it on silent, you won't hear it, even if it is nearby. But you don't have to sleep with your phone near to you. You can, but put it on silent. Then again, it's not disturbing your sleep. So it really is. When these studies come out, they are somewhat misleading, in as much as people probably end up getting more scared and more anxious, and that potentially makes them sleep even worse because they're then saying, oh, I'm using my phone. Is that going to cause me to have a heart attack? Short answer is there is nothing in this study that says that is the case. And it would be a reasonable question to ask as to why such a study like this ever got funded. We're constantly hearing there's not much money for the health system and not enough money for medical research. And surely there are better uses of funding than to do a study such as this. Clinicians, and again I'm going to quote, should encourage patients to practice healthy habits around their screen time. This could include limiting mobile phone use before bed and taking regular breaks to engage in activities that promote heart health, such as exercising or spending time outdoors. Not sure that's groundbreaking. It's important. It's important that we don't spend too much time unproductively on our phone. If it's substitution time for what is otherwise productive activity, we're reading something, we're learning something, maybe we are engaging with people who we want to engage with, so picking up the phone and ringing somebody and checking in on how they're going, maybe somebody you haven't spoken to for a while, chatting with family members. I mean, the ability these days to talk to anyone anywhere in the world is fantastic. I remember going overseas in the 1980s, and to ring my mother, who was at home, obviously, it was quite a process to, in terms of international dialing. And if you're in a hotel, it was very expensive, and through the 90s and 2000s, you used to get these phone cards. You can do it quite cheaply. And now you just take your mobile phone wherever you go, and if you've got one of the, apps, whether it's WhatsApp or Signal, you can just call people. You don't even need a phone connection. You don't even have to pay for roaming. Most places, if you're in a hotel or public places, you can use Wi-Fi and you can ring your family at home. Fantastic. You can check in on your children or your grandchildren or your grandparents. So it's good to be using our phone to connect. So it can bring us closer together. Like a knife. A knife is very useful to cut your steak. Fantastic. You're not going to cut your steak with a spoon, maybe unless you've cooked it for, 6 hours as a casserole, okay, you don't need a knife then. But if it's actual steak, you put it on a barbecue, you need your knife to cut it. It's a very useful tool. Knives can be dangerous if they're used in a way that is to the user. So knives are used to stab people. That's terrible, obviously, goes without say. But is it the knife or is it the user? It's the user. So with the phone, it's also the user. So we don't need to be scared of our phones. We don't need to see them as a threat to our health. We need to use them in a reasonable way. And yes, if we're on them too much in an unproductive manner and spending too much time, particularly on social media, and there's a role for it. We're not putting the genie back into the bottle. There is a role for it. But if we reduce or restrict our time, then that's good for us. Yes, some of that time can be used for exercise and making sure that we are getting enough sleep. So if we stick to the basics with health, eating sensibly, getting some regular exercise, getting enough sleep, managing our stress, that reduces our likelihood of getting ill, not just from heart disease, but from a whole host of conditions. Not a force field. There are no guarantees in this world, no guarantees, but we can certainly reduce our risks. Do we need to worry about pointless associative studies? Absolutely no, we do not. Thanks for listening to Dr. Joe Unplugged. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also follow it on all the socials. There'll be new content uploaded each week.